True crimers, welcome to Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Coffendaffer. For those of you who have never joined in, I have 28 years of federal law enforcement experience, 25 as an FBI special agent, and we really like to unpack cases from a law enforcement perspective. We have amazing people that are on the program in terms of in the chat and that are also part of our Twitter true crime community that I always love to hear from. So welcome, everybody. This is a special segment I wanted to do on Delphi. I think most of you know that the Delphi case is sort of near and dear to my heart, if a case can be like that. Just from the standpoint of these two little girls, I've been following this case for 2.5 years. Just to give the quickest background, Abby Williams and Liberty German were best friends, and they had a day off of school. It was February 13th. And they were at the Monon High Bridge. This area is a really cool place outside of the little town of Delphi that a lot of people went to just take walks. There were hiking trails. This bridge that was there is amazing. I'm sure many of you have seen it. And it was on that day that they took this walk that they ended up losing their lives. They were found the next day, February 14th. Their throats were slashed. They were undressed. Then Abby was reclothed in Libby's outfit. And it was just a vicious, horrible, horrible murder that went unsolved for over 5 years. The FBI came in well over a month after the investigation started. And they believed that this was the area where this crime took place, right on his property, about just yards away. We'll show you a diagram where you can see how close it was. Many people believed Ron Logan was his name, and the FBI believed that, at least in their initial examination of the evidence. The evidence, which was really interesting because Libby actually took a photo, I should say a video of the perpetrator. And normally when you have a video of the perpetrator and it was audio, guys down the hill, when you have that, normally you're able to make a case much quicker than over 5 years, but it sort of just languished. Unfortunately, the way this video was shot, a lot of people said the person was over 6 foot tall. Some people said no, the person was about 5'5", 5'6". So it was very difficult to tell much from that video other than the clothing that was worn and a possible audio identification that could possibly be done in the future. Again, that audio, a girlfriend of Ron Logan identified as Ron Logan. So, it just was very interesting when the person arrested was Richard Allen. Richard Allen worked at a CVS. He didn't have a criminal history, and he was formerly in the military, and he all of a sudden was arrested. What we're going to do today is really just unpack what happened today, and we're going to unpack what we can look for in the future. And I thought, what better guest to have than a writer? Whenever I think of true crime, some of the best ways that I think true crime is put forward is in the form of the written word, because it captures so much that video can't even capture. It's always when I read a book and then I go see it in the theater, I think, wait a minute, what about all of this? That's always left out. So writers have a keen eye typically for detail, and they're great storytellers. So without any further ado, please welcome Kevin Linehan to the stage. Kevin, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Jen, how you doing?
I'm
good
doing
to see
good.
you. Been a while
Great.
since we've been in the same stage together.
I know. When I look back, it was every day during the trial, at least the trial days, and other days even regarding the
Yeah.
Karen Reed case. So some of
Mhm.
you in the audience might recall Kevin or recognize him. He was on Court TV quite a lot, breaking down the facts in a very logical manner regarding the Karen Reed case. But we're not going to divert to her. This day is all about, and really the next several weeks are all about Delphi and all about justice for Abby and Libby. Kevin, tell me, what were your first impressions, if you will, when you first heard and started reading about this case?
Well, so after my channel was pretty new, and I had done a series on Lizzie Borden, and somebody said in this was in the summer of 22, and so somebody said, "Are you still here, Jen?" I don't. Did I,
Oh, yeah, I'm here. I'm just giving you center stage.
oh, okay, all right. Sorry. Uh, but anyways, in the summer of 22, after I did that series, somebody said to me, one of the new subscribers said, "Why don't you do something on the Delphi murders?" Now, I remembered it just from the news 5, 6 years before as the Snapchat murders in my head, and so I did start looking into that case, and it had maybe I had an advantage. A lot had happened, especially in the 6 months before that, in terms of Keegan Kline and stuff like that. But you have a different perspective when you're looking at things with a little bit of hindsight. So you're looking at things that have already developed as opposed to experiencing them real time, as I think you were probably because you were so close to this case and seeing first the Ron Logan stuff develop and then the Keegan Kline stuff and then the search for the river near Keegan Kline's house and all of that stuff, which that search was just going on as I was starting to look into this case. So I just tried to sit back and weigh the evidence kind of more carefully like that. I don't know if I had a different perspective because of that. What do you think?
Oh, I think anytime people come into a case and they're looking at it more in arrears, which I suppose all of us were from the standpoint, except for people who started watching it clear
Mhm.
back 6 years ago when it was first happening. But I know for me, I think I'm such a court document person. That's where I always start is with those court documents. I really don't pay too much attention to the media. I look at
Mhm.
what's in those documents. And that for me was a big reason why I know I thought Logan was at least responsible to some degree in this case, meaning that
Mhm.
he solely did it or did it in part with somebody else. Did you
Mhm.
ever glean that? Did you ever read the probable cause affidavit concerning
Yeah.
Ron Logan?
Yeah, so I that was when I first started using Reddit. There's a couple of good groups on Reddit that were really well run pages that had all the documents on there. So you could get all the documents. I found links to interviews with the police, basically the state police chief, Doug Carter. And so you took information from that kind of thing. And for me, really kind of came down to trust in logic. So I believed that the police probably had all of the communications from Abby and Libby that day. Now, there's a chance they didn't because they were using an app called Yellow or Yabu or something at the time. And it's kind of like a dating app. It's a dangerous Snapchat app that has once people read your message, messages go up for a certain amount of time and they disappear. So there was a chance that information might not have been recovered. But if the police were never in 6 years able to find evidence of Abby and Libby telling anybody that they were going to the Monon High Bridge, then no matter how bad everything else looked, those girls were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I stuck to that logic.
I think that is so interesting. And you and I one time had an offline chat about this one time about Abby and Libby. And I remember you saying that. I am always much more suspect about that because I think when you consider the fact that you have an individual charged with this crime, Richard Allen now, that
Mhm.
has no criminal history. I understand that there was a small domestic situation. I say small, no domestic situation is small. So just
Mhm.
rewind that. But I'm
Mhm.
saying a situation where he was not arrested, she was
Yeah.
not arrested, but purportedly Richard Allen's wife was I think even seen medical attention in a hospital,
Mhm.
possibly related. but I've never read the reports on that. I've just
Yeah.
always seen a blurb on that. But you look at somebody with absolutely no criminal background. You look at the fact that this was a day off from school. One thing that's always bothered me about this case, and Kevin, I know you're a logical guy, is the fact that Abby was communicating with Keegan Kline via his, avatar, if you will, Anthony Schatz,
Yep.
and communicating about getting together.
Hmm.
And that always, I think, has really bothered somebody like me who, in
Yeah.
years of investigating, Kevin, it happens, but it's very unusual for,
Hmm.
well, they were just in the wrong place, the wrong time. It happens, but this is Delphi, Indiana.
Yeah.
This is odd for this set of circumstances to just happenstance be at the same place. Go ahead.
And not only that, right, Jen? But I think he told the police as he was trying to cooperate with them, Keegan Kline, I mean, in the summer of 2023, that he went to Delphi with his father, and then he dropped his father. They parked at the cemetery, and the father went into the woods. Then he came out a while later, covered in blood, and that they threw, I don't know if it was a phone or a murder weapon or something, off the bridge, and that's what caused that search. And I seen pictures at the time. They would have like 24 state police SUVs out there on the crime scene searching that river. So the state of Indiana put enormous resources into that. So it does really look like Keegan Kline's the guy, right? Or at least not his, or at least, and I think or his father was the guy, right? But this is the thing here. It's either the mother of all coincidences or Richard Allen did it by himself. And I ended up leaning towards that just because I don't believe there was any connection ever proven between Richard Allen and anybody else, whether Logan or Keegan Kline. And I don't believe any messages were ever discovered that anybody could have known. So if Keegan Kline couldn't have known that the girls were going to be at the bridge that day, then he couldn't have been involved, right? So that's where I was stuck with that.
Yeah, it was frustrating, right? Because we knew they had communications, but as you mentioned, these snaps and other communications they have come and disappear. And so that, I think, has been a huge problem for law enforcement, because what exactly was detailed in those communications? My understanding is they were trying to hook up. They were trying to get together, if you will. And I always wondered if that was the lure. And then I also wondered, I never thought it was Keegan Kline that did this crime, but other people that were in his circle of predators and child predators that could have had or been exposed to this information about that. Again, it didn't get ferreted out well, I think, because it disappeared, if that makes sense.
And the problem is with characters like, and I'm sure you saw this in your career a lot of times, where people turn out to be just unreliable witnesses that lie. Here's a guy that's maybe looking for attention in jail or looking to cut a deal. So he's trying to sell his father down the river, even though his father had no connection to it. Their phone tracking data did not track their phones being in the area at all. There's no evidence that the Klines ever went to Delphi in Indiana. So maybe they're smart enough to leave their phones home. But, they don't seem that smart, So I don't know. I mean, it's just, so you had to weigh it all and to me, it was just, I think the police would have found some evidence that the girls had told someone, and they told Kelsey, the sister, that they didn't decide to go there until the last minute. So I don't know. But it looks like a meeting time, right? Like it happens at 2:00, which is on the hour. So that kind of looks like a meeting time.
Yeah, when you just take a logical look, again, never thought it was Keegan Kline or Keegan Kline's father, Tony, nicknamed Tony, right? I never thought it was them. But I always wondered within this predator circle if the information about this meetup was given to somebody. Richard
And we
Allen.
don't know if there is a predator circle, though, right? We don't know that if Keegan Kline ever shared that with anybody.
We don't know. You're right. We know he was in predator circles, if you will, that other people were involved in conversations and whatnot regarding the pornography that they were distributing and
Yeah.
spreading
You got
around.
it somewhere. Yeah.
That's what I mean within
Yeah.
those circles.
Right.
But you're right. We don't know that any of those snaps or details about those snaps were ever distributed to his circle of child porn buddies, if you will.
Yeah.
So agree with you there. But let's get back to, I want to talk about really quick exactly what happened today. So today we seated, or they seated 11 jurors. And Kevin, were you surprised? This is pretty lightning fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm still not that familiar with the process. I've been on a jury a couple of times, but not in a high profile case like this. We saw how long it took up here in a recent case in Massachusetts. So, but every state has their own way of doing it. I think they're sequestering the jurors here, aren't they?
Well, it is amazing what they're doing here. First of all, total sequestration. They are getting their jury pool from Allen County. I believe it's Allen County, which is, the largest county, and then bringing the jurors to Carroll County, which is what I had hoped they would do in the Idaho case. It's very rare to sequester a jury because you can imagine it causes jurors to want to make decisions quicker. They're away from their families. This is a very big difference or distance. And so it's a big step for a judge to make this decision, I think. But they did it. And they've already seated 11. So, the process, basically, you fill out all these questionnaires, and then typically, the defense and prosecution will take quite a length of time. But this tells me they didn't really need to, have to, or want to take a long time with these jurors. So I thought it was interesting that one was released because they said, I believe they believed in, they said they were psychic. I thought that was interesting. Maybe they could have used a psychic on the jury.
Have you heard anything about why has the state charged? Are they bringing up the death penalty here? What are the rules in Indiana on that?
No, they're not bringing up the death penalty is not on the table, which I also found very interesting. And then they added in 2 charges well after the fact of basically kidnapping. And I found that really interesting because, I mean, just being on the prosecution side, right, for my whole career, when you see that a lot of times, I'm not saying it happened here, I'm just saying in my experience, it's because the prosecution isn't confident in making that murder case. Right. So they're worried. They're worried that they're not going to be able to show that Richard Allen committed the murder because they have no murder weapon. They have no clothing. They have no indicia of the crime at all in terms of his DNA anywhere. They don't have a video. They don't have anyone really identifying him at that crime scene. Yes, we have different vehicles that we're seeing. We have somebody that makes a possible that they saw him on the road, possibly muddy, possibly bloody. It's a pretty blurry, I thought, but I want to get your reflections in the probable cause statement about what was really seen of Richard Allen. So I think they added in the kidnapping because I think they feel confident maybe that they can make that video that they believe they can link that to Richard Allen, that they think the jury will believe that was him saying, go down the hill or guys down the hill. What do you think?
I don't know. I remember at the time I got the impression there may be technical legal reasons for adding that in as a second charge. But I do also think it's interesting. So not sure how they do things in Indiana, but my impression would be that if you felt very confident in the case, like you say, you would put the death penalty on the table because that would be a lot of leverage on getting him to offer a deal, to getting Richard Allen to say, okay, you got me. I'm going to confess to this. We'll skip the trial. Families won't have to go through that. My family won't have to go through it, but I won't be killed in prison. So, but by not having that leverage, it does suggest a little bit of weakness in their case, right?
I 100% agree. And I think a lot of reason that they don't have anything that's really rock solid. And I'll say it. I mean, except if he confessed. If these
Yeah.
confessions end up being legit and he gives motive as an example, because everybody's wondering. I mean, people in law enforcement, people who are, pundits, people who are lawyers, people who are writers, why? Why on this day? Why two victims? Why such vicious murders? Why?
Well, it's funny. So when I was doing the research, there was an interesting video where Doug Carter, the state superintendent of the police, did a press conference where he referenced this movie book that I never heard of called The Shack. And when I watched that press conference, and in that, he said, I'm addressing the killer. He said, I'm addressing the killer. And it struck me that it was not random that he chose that book and that movie. And so I looked in to see what it was about. And it was basically this guy who grows up and he learns that his father was a serial killer. And it's kind of a Christian themed movie that goes into themes of redemption. And it got me thinking. And then at the time, I had been studying psychopaths and serial killers. Not saying I'm an expert at all, but I had been reading up on it, for a bit. And my understanding is that people that have that psychopathic brain that you're born with, they don't feel empathy for other human beings. Now, most of those people are not going to develop killing urges or killing fantasies. But the ones that do, it's because there's nothing to make them really feel like if you're a boy, it's normal for boys especially, but even just people, to get a certain endorphin from dominating someone, winning a game, winning the football game, winning the fight, and thinking about things like that, right? But you wouldn't get that rush from imagining yourself torturing someone, because the empathetic part of your brain would stop you from feeling any pleasure in that. But if your brain isn't built that way, some of these people might start to develop these fantasies at that time when they're adolescents. And that's when I think all serial killing begins with urges and fantasies that they develop in their adolescence. And so they generally start killing in their 20s, right? When they finally start acting on those urges. But why would someone like Richard Allen, who we knew the killer was someone in his 40s. So why would the killer not kill in an area that rural? We knew that he probably had not killed anybody. We knew it was someone that knew the crime scene, because it's a very specific location. So they knew it was someone from the Delphi area. And yet there had been no similar killings over the last 20 years in that area. So this is probably this killer's first time killing. Well, why would you start killing in your 40s? And what I speculated was that somebody like that didn't kill because he was married and had a kid and had an image of himself as a good father. And that's what prevented him from killing. And I believe that maybe the police developed that same profile, and that's why they referenced the shack. And then what they were trying to say to him is, see yourself in that way. Don't do it again. They were trying to appeal to his image of himself as a father. And so what I speculated as a last step on that was that why would he start killing now? I said, because he had a daughter that had just left the house, maybe to go to college. And I put this out there about 3 weeks before they caught Richard Allen. And as soon as they caught him, I started looking in, because I had put in my profile, I think he's probably been with his wife all his life, and he has this image of himself that way. And it just got lucky, and it turned out he had a daughter. She didn't leave to go to college, but 2 months before she moved out because she got engaged. And it all just kind of fit to me. That I don't know, maybe that was my amateur understanding a few weeks before they nabbed him.
At least it's some sort of reason. I just, it doesn't comport for me. It really doesn't. But I think it's at least some sort of reasoning. And I also know, and that's why, Doug Carter and what he said, we know you're out there. That was written by the FBI Behavioral Science Unit.
I figured that.
That was not him having some great epiphany and writing those prose. That was from the Behavioral Science Unit of the FBI.
And the reference of the shack, do you think that was theirs too, or was that just something he threw in?
I don't know if he threw that in. I just know that whole other speech was exactly from the Behavioral Science Unit. I have that paperwork somewhere, and that's what
Yeah.
that was from. So I'm sorry I wasn't able to give Doug Carter much credit. And I have to tell you too, this is a case that I have to be careful, but this is a case that a lot of the information I had and have is from is information that isn't public per se. And a lot of that really relates to, I mean, people think that using a solo cup, deep sixes a case in the Karen Reed case, if people knew what happened in this case, they would shudder. But I don't think they ever will, because I've watched how it's evolved, that all of this is being protected. And I understand that, really people are worried about justice being served, Kevin. But I really, in this case, I have not liked the way anything has happened in terms of the treatment of Richard Allen. And believe me, if he did it, I want him to languish in those conditions the rest of his life for what he did to Abby and Libby. It galls me, anybody who would do that. But you can't stick an innocent guy, innocent under the law, in a prison like that and put them in sequestration because they go crazy. And I don't know if you saw his mugshot. He looks like he's been in a concentration camp, Kevin, not like he's been in any prison. I mean, the guy is just, and I don't know if mentally he lost it, but there was talk about that. He was eating his papers. He was a hot mess.
But that also could be a stunt, right?
I don't know if he really strikes me, though, as some evil genius. And I say that because right after the murders, he went and said, hey, listen, I was there between, I think the exact times he quoted was 1 and 3. He said, I was there, because they wanted everybody to come forward who had been on the trail. So maybe that is an evil genius, good thing, right thing to do, but he put himself out there.
I think that the main evidence against him is because he came forward. I don't think they would have found him without that. So he sunk himself.
He did. Well, I don't agree. I don't think it was the truth when they said, I don't know if you remember this, but they blamed an FBI secretary, essentially, or the FBI for not properly cataloging that tip that came in, or not that tip, but his words that he had written, and not following up.
I didn't hear that. No, I didn't hear that.
Well, such. He said it at the press conference. It's such baloney, because anybody who understands how those command posts are run, the investigators, the lead detectives, everything funnels through them. It doesn't go into some secretary deciding. Nothing wrong with secretaries, they're the best, but giving the information and then them deciding, okay, so-and-so go out and interview, so-and-so do this. That's how it works. So I never really bought that, but I do believe that maybe Richard Allen, it seems like he was getting loose lips, if we're to believe this, that he told somebody, and that's how they got back on him. That's just, we'll see. I'm probably wrong.
If he puts himself at the crime scene, and so I don't know if you want to play that video, but you see that he arrives at the trail, which I think is like a beginning of the trail, goes from a mile to where it gets to the bridge. And when he arrives, and you can see him on camera, the nearby store picks him up. The Harvest store looks like his vehicle.
Let's show that. I'd
Okay.
like to show for our viewers about a 6-minute video. I want to give credit to Gray Hughes Investigates. He does a great job with these videos. I really like his video work. I think it's really good. I communicate with him a lot just about different cases. He definitely digs deep, and so I want to give Gray Hughes credit here. I'm going to bring it up and we're going to play it, but I want to say,
we're going to try.
we're going to try. I want to say, Kevin, though, that we don't know this is him. This is the states in their probable cause affidavit. This is what they're saying, but it's pretty sketchy. I mean, just writing probable cause affidavits, this is sketchy to me. But when I say sketchy,
Well, it'll depend on the accuracy of these witness statements. They may. So I just saw on court TV on this recently, where we'll see there's an adult woman that gets to the bridge, and but she maybe describes Richard Allen in a different way that's been presented. She thought it was a younger guy. So I don't know. Supposedly, we'll see.
yeah,
So,
I think they're going to have trouble with that, but nevertheless, they have no defense they can present.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Let's get this up here. Oh,
let me see. Right.
Oh, good. You're in charge. Good.
Yeah, I guess once it started, I was able. So,
that is so cool. We're tag team. All right.
All right. So that's all right. So this is just so this here down on the bottom right is the Monon High Bridge, and this is the Monon High Trail here. It's those are 3 juveniles that were hanging out. It's a day off. It's February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day, and they have the week off from school. And so the kids, the population in the area is only 2,000, under 2,000, and the towns surround it are even smaller. Some of them have a population of 4. So it's an extremely rural area. And this is, to know this, the killer would, only a local would know this spot, but it's a very popular spot with the kids. Oh, let me see if I can turn the volume down. Oh, there we go. I got the, all right. So we'll go silent here. So you can.
I kind of like that music. No, go ahead.
But this way you can talk. Have you been here to the crime scene at all, Jen?
I never have been here. Obviously, I've seen so many photographs, footage, video footage, but no, I've never been. But I love.
So they take a picture here. This establishes a timestamp. So the girls take a picture right there at 1:26, and they post it on their social media. And this is the video camera up here at the Harvest store. I'm not sure that going by, that might be Richard at this point. I think it is actually, or they're conjecturing that it is based on eyewitness testimony. And he parks up at this.
Can you pause while you talk? Because we're going to get the timestamp for when Richard, they're speculating this is Richard. The problem I always had with it is that, it was a PT Cruiser. It was at an older car. There was never a match to his actual vehicle. And it was very sketchy. I'm telling you, I would never have written a probable cause affidavit like this, just me personally, with no license plate, with no exact color match, with no exact make, with no exact model. I just couldn't do that, other than I could say generally. In other words, if I had a white car that was a 4-door sedan, if it was that specific, but they're all over the map with this. Go ahead.
I had actually, just to keep it paused for a second, Jen, I wanted to always ask you this, what you thought about this as a professional. My theory on this had been, I don't understand why the investigators didn't do this in the first place. So the entire population within 20 miles of here is like 2,000. It's like maybe 2,500 at the time. And the population of males between the age of 25 and 50 in Delphi is only 500 people. Okay. So we knew that it was someone that was driving a dark colored, smallish sports car. So that could be a small sports car or an SUV, something like a hatchback, right? So there's certainly a very finite number of those vehicles in the city, in the town, right? And I don't know why, with the resources they had, you couldn't find those, and so find who had access to those, and start knocking down that list of 500 men between who had access and who had alibis. You look at that list and say, all right, this person was definitely at work. This person is too old. I'm sorry, where are the age? This person is 7 feet tall. This person's black. People that just don't fit, and have a good alibi. And you start whittling it down. And I think eventually you'd get that number down to about 20 people fairly quickly, within days. And then now we know that the killer would have to be covered in blood. And so why wouldn't you just go up to now you wouldn't have probable cause, but go up to each one of the people, those 20 people, and say, will you give us permission to spray luminol inside your car? And there's going to be 4 or 5 people that don't give permission. But now you've got a very short list of suspects.
Well, my whole thing, there's a couple of things. First of all, not necessarily covered in blood, because if they had planned this murder, you know, now you're looking at somebody who brought a gun, who would have brought a knife, who would have somehow thought that he could find victims there. And you could bring a change of clothes. I mean, there was a creek there. In fact, their clothes, the kids' clothes, I should say, Abby's clothes, were in the creek. So you could wash off. But I do agree with you about transfer. But you could look at his car now, Richard Allen.
Yeah, and so they mustn't have found anything. I'm sure they looked at it. But you know, it's been 6 years. I mean, maybe he cleaned it 1,000 times. I don't know. I'm just thinking, yes, there were chance that wouldn't have 100% certain captured it, because it could have actually been someone that used to live in Delphi years ago and remembered the Monon High Bridge and came back here. But all those things, everybody kind of agreed they were unlikely, that the killer probably lived in Delphi. Sure. And so there was a witness, as we'll see after in this video, that saw someone on the road covered in mud and blood around 3:30.
Yeah,
there are some questions with that, I know, but
there's a lot of questions about that specificity. Yeah. We'll see how they do on the stand, but it's sketchy to me.
Okay. So here he is parking up on the top right there, and he seems to either sit in the car for 10 minutes or he's hanging around in the woods. Is he looking? Is he this to me, like if there was a meeting at 2, he's waiting, or maybe he's just hanging around watching to see. Looking for kids. I don't know, but he seems to wait for 10 minutes. And on the bottom, you see the girls, and they're about to reach the entrance of the trail. And there's Richard Allen. So now they got him walking over.
And again, if he's this murderer, why doesn't he pull out the gun and attack them?
Because there's too many. And I think there was actually a 4th girl too that was even younger, but that's why she's not included as a witness. Mm-hmm. So he just.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think it's not only is it too many, but it's too close to the entrance. Mm-hmm. Now this is the young adult who comes over, and that's Abby and Libby about to get dropped off up there. And you see how close the timing is.
That's the sister. She drops them off.
Yeah. And see, this is the thing too. This is Richard Allen was an outdoorsman. He lived in the area for a long time. He would have recognized this as the perfect trap for what he wanted to do. It's about 800 feet long, I think, this bridge, and the creek is near the beginning of it, and then it just goes into woods. It's not that safe to cross. It's an old rail bridge that's got crumbling ties. Adults would very seldom have crossed to the end of the bridge, but kids would have always done it on a dare. And at the far end of the bridge is secluded. It's also private property. So if you're a predator, those kids are going to go to the end of the bridge, and then they're going to turn around and they're going to come back. So you got them trapped.
But that's another thing I wanted to mention. To do a crime like this on your own private property makes a lot of sense from the standpoint of you have that privacy, you have more control. Here, this guy, Richard Allen, he doesn't own any of this. He's as vulnerable as anybody to the fact that this is Ron Logan's land. But go ahead.
So Gray Hughes seems to speculate. We can't know. He's speculating that Richard Allen starts down the trail and that he passes the girls on the trail. We'll never know, right? But he also could have been hiding in the woods. But then he turns around. And I think Libby takes a pic here, but maybe I guess not. It's been a while since I watched this.
Yeah, I've got all the timestamps written down.
Oh, there it is. Libby takes a pitch. Oops. I'm sorry. I hit the wrong.
So basically at 12:43 is when we have the 3 juveniles. At 1:26, the juveniles take the picture of the bench, those 3 juveniles. At 1:27, the suspect vehicle is by Hoosier, Harvest, and Parks. At 1:28, the subject vehicle parks at the CPS building.
Yeah.
And then are we at 1:42? Yeah. Oh, we're clear at 2:15.
Oh, I can go further back if you want.
At At 142,
So
supposedly Richard Allen, right, passes the 3 juveniles. At 144, the 3 juveniles cross the road to the 25 bridge.
correct. So I'll go back a little bit before. All right. So here's 141. And again, the way we know the timestamps here, not to the second, but within a reasonable range, is because the girls took a picture a little bit before there. And we also saw Richard Allen's car, presumably his car, go by and park up there. So we have,
Presumably.
yeah, so we have surveillance timestamps on the camera, and we have the timestamps of the kids' photos that they posted. And so they described seeing him, and he described seeing them in his original interview the day after. They more or less accurately described each other.
Yeah, more or less. I'll agree with that. And then at 146, we have Sue passing that Hoosier harvest location. At 149, again, we kind of went backwards and forwards, but it was at 149 that Abby and Libby are dropped off.
Right. So there it is right there. They don't come at the beginning of the trail. They're dropped off at this side entrance that people commonly used. It's private property, but people commonly used it. And so they dropped off there. It's halfway up the trail. And so you can see they're on the trail. Sue, they're calling her Sue, is just coming towards Richard Allen, and he's hanging on the bridge. He says he's looking for fish.
Right. You know, so, I got to tell you just really quick on that, if you want to pause there. When I read that, the probable cause affidavit, that, I don't know if you realize this, they did not record their interview session with Richard Allen. This is a huge magnitude of error that they would not record it. And there were also other issues with their recording devices, you know, as to why they didn't record. That's a big problem when this is your main suspect in such a high profile case that you do not record this. And so I think that they took one excerpt out of everything they would have said. They talked to him for such an extended amount of time. And what did they take out? He was looking for fish and the stock ticker or whatever. Remember all that conversation that was before and after that. You can't extract something like that is so ridiculous, which makes him look really ridiculous, without showing the whole context. And we'll never know that context unless he takes the stand and at least gives us his version. And hopefully we'll get more on that. But
and this young adult does describe seeing Abby and Libby, or who she presumed she saw 2 young girls that age walk by her who she thinks is Abby and Libby. At that, so, and note the time. That's about 1:55 when that happens, and Abby and Libby reached the bridge a very short time later, and we know that from Libby's.
I think it was 152, right? That he sees. I have that sees the suspect who's 50 feet away, which isn't that far away, 16 yards away, right? He's not on the trail. He's away from the trail. Supposedly, that's what Sue sees. And then at 156, he's on
the bridge.
Yeah, he's on a plank or whatever they call it. Yeah.
Right. So the times here, I mean, if Richard Allen has him at the bridge, he has himself at the bridge. Again, I don't know, unless we're going to question the accuracy of the testimony since it's not recorded, but he has himself at the bridge. The next day, when he's initially talking to the conservation officer, he has himself at the bridge at that time, and that woman sees him.
In a 2-hour time frame. He doesn't have himself at the bridge at 1:52 or 1:56. He has it generally within a 2-hour time frame. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So again, we're replaying this part, but you can see this is where they are right now is not on a trail. It's on the bridge. It's that's just what I was saying about this bridge. The front part crosses the creek, but then it continues high over these the woods and the hills there. And so this is all bridge here. There's no way off. He's got him trapped right now. They have no way off.
Okay, another witness. Another witness at that time. I don't know if you can stop it, Kevin, but another witness at that time purportedly sees a PT Cruiser. And this is the problem. We've got 3 different car descriptions, and none of them match his car, by the way. So we've got 3.
But they all match pretty closely. They all have a dark, smaller SUV kind of thing, right? So,
Yeah. I don't know. To me, a PT Cruiser, I think another person described an electric car. Another person said an older car. To me, the descriptions aren't enough to say they even all 3 match, much less match Richard Allen's car. But go ahead.
I mean, I wouldn't remember at all. I don't know how people remember these things. I guess I would make a good witness. I remember like narratives and things that happened, but if you asked me what a car was or what somebody's wearing, I would never remember. So, and just it says we don't have an image here, but the bridge ends and there's signs up: trespassing, private property. There's now you see a road here. That's a private road, and there's a house at the end of it. And you have to when Richard Allen says guys down the hill, you have to go down that hill to get to the road. And had the girls known they were in trouble, they could have done that. But the instincts of the kids here, when they see that sign, no trespassing, they're going to wait for the guy coming across the bridge, to get to the end, and then they're going to go back.
Well, and we also forgot, I don't know if you can stop at 202, but at 202 is where Libby takes a photo of the bridge. And then at 207, Libby takes a photo of Abby. So we kind of missed that time frame, but just a couple. There we go. So this is an actual photo that Libby takes, and then Libby takes another one just a few minutes later at 207 of Abby. That's kind of the famous photo, right? Because it's
and I believe there's new information on it now that they might be able to actually, or I don't know. There's some confirmation that at some point that Richard Allen was coming up behind her or something. I don't know. It doesn't look like it there though, so I'm not sure.
And then at 211, that's when the PT Cruiser / SUV, I'd never think of a PT Cruiser as being an SUV, but anyway, is on the south side now of the CPS building.
You're remembering it days later, a small trunkless vehicle, which could be a small sporty vehicle or an SUV, right? Because otherwise a car has a trunk. I'm
just saying from a factual standpoint, I think it's problematic for any jury to say beyond a reasonable doubt Richard Allen's car was there. If I were on the prosecution team, I would be like, people, we don't need to really focus in on this much. He's already said he was there twice. He said it in the first interview and the second, and all of these little details, I think, really actually muddy the case against him because it makes all their witnesses just have too many varying stories. My whole case would be about those confessions. I would just start with the confessions almost.
So here we have Richard Allen. It takes about, I don't know, a few minutes, 5 minutes to lead them. He's going to lead them across the creek and to the killing area.
Oh, wait a minute. Did you get it? 214 is where the down the hill video is. We've got the 207 picture of Abby walking. 211 is the PT Cruiser that's seen by a witness. At 214, the vehicle is parked at CPS, and then we see the down the hill.
Yeah. So there's the up the top on that center square. There's the cruiser going by. I don't know if there it is right there. So see, you got
simultaneous where they're seeing the cruiser.
Yeah. And there on the top right is the video at that moment, 2:15, that Libby took. Interestingly, that Libby's phone was found underneath Abby's body, I believe. So it almost like it was placed there. So it's really interesting. Like, why wouldn't he take it? But also, you try to put yourself in the minds of the killer. What's he doing here? Why is he going to lead them across the creek? The creek is not deep water, but it's freezing water because it's February. But he has to get back to his car anyways. So he has to go across the creek at some point. And once he kills the girls, assuming it's Richard Allen, he's not going to want to go by the trail because you might see someone that way. So I think this was a terror technique, and I feel the girls would have known they were in deep shit, whatever he told them. But at this point, when they know something's wrong, when he's going to lead them with their shoes on through frozen water, I think the terror would have really been setting in at that time.
Well, and again, the thought process is because they found this unspent round. So it wasn't fired. It's just an unspent round.
Right.
So
right.
what I'm picturing is whoever did this murder, this is a complete bungle from the standpoint, although they got away with it for 5.5 years. Why would they eject a round? And by the way, I know we're never going to get to see it until well after the trial, but what did this round look like? Was it a fresh round or had it been there for a while? There was a lot of talk that this round had been there for a while. But remember basically the tool marks, they call it, of that round when it was ejected. There are ejector and extractor marks on the casing that hold the bullet that laid there right near Libby, I believe. And so the point is that he used that to maneuver them, because a lot of people say, well, why did they comply? Well, if you have a gun to your head and you're that small, it does make some sense.
Right. So he spends like an hour and a half with the bodies, a very long time. And another thing about it
makes sense.
And another thing about this location to note, though, I had spent time poring over terrain maps on this. This was if you looked at this map while the girls were missing with a kind of understanding, if you knew that somebody wanted to kill them, this is where he would take them, because the terrain is lower. It's a little bit raised up from the creek, but it's surrounded by hills, and you can't see the bridge really from there. The only area you might be able to see is if somebody is leaving that house and drives down that private road, but you're not going to be able to see him. So up straight up top is the cemetery. That's where Keegan Kline claimed he sat waiting for his dad, but you can't see them from there. It's the hills and the woods are enough to protect. It's a very secluded spot where you could spend time with your victims.
But I have to say this, though. I agree with you. It was secluded. But if you look on the photos of this crime scene, there were huge gaps where this road and where they were at was easily seen, which is why
from the road, yeah, definitely.
Which is why I believe the bodies were moved, right? We know that they were killed in one spot because, again, when you slit somebody's throat, that's a ton of blood, and there were two of them. And then they were moved a little bit out of the way, I think, to camouflage. We also know there were, again, the quote unquote Odin branches, things, which I think were just put there to hide them. And then the rune, which is what some people say that believe in the Odin theory, was where they wiped the blood, from their hand off on this tree, if he didn't have anything to wipe it on. But they did spend quite a bit of time. We know for sure, Kevin. All this car stuff, I'm really not buying very well. But we know they spent enough time to have them undress, to have one redress, all that. Yeah. This was a sexual crime.
And these
no mistake.
They always are, whether it involves a sexual assault or a sexual activity. For a serial killer, killing is sex. And so it's some kind of a domination fantasy that's playing out in his mind. So this here is 3:50 when I think Grant Hughes accurately has him walking back, and we won't know exactly what path, but this is roughly where he would have gone. And and this matches with the time where he says he was there roughly, and then you'll see. So now he's exposed on this road if he is covered. But it's a very low trafficked road, and there's the car that drives by and says that they saw someone walking muddy and bloody.
And just to be clear, he said he was there between 1:30 and 3:30. So this is well after that time frame. Now we're getting into 4 o'clock. But nevertheless, generally speaking, and again, some of this video is just conjecture, right?
Yeah. Oh,
They
yeah,
don't-
yeah. So there's the
It's
car that goes by that supposedly sees somebody walking muddy and bloody.
it's
And then
it's
just of note here too, there's the Harvester store that has a surveillance camera, but why doesn't it pick up Richard Allen? Now there probably is a good technical reason for that, but why doesn't it pick him up walking? I don't know the answer to that. It may be the camera's at a distance where it doesn't pick up something as small as a walking person.
I think it's a problem. I think a
Yeah,
lot of their case has a lot of problems. But if he confessed, if he gave a motive, if he gave corroborative, oh, thank you, Kevin. If he gave corroborative information when he told people and said something that then they can corroborate for what was found at the crime scene or whatever,
yeah,
things that people didn't know, like the
yeah,
undressing. For instance, the other thing is Libby's neck had a very jagged, it was an attack, the way
yeah,
she was treated more than
yeah,
Abby,
yeah,
which was, if you can believe it, nicer. He dressed Abby. He
yeah.
redressed,
And
left
he,
being
he even
naked.
put Libby's bra and Abby's bra back on Abby. Right? Am I correct on
Yeah,
that?
well, he reclothed Abby in Libby's clothing. I don't know that she had her bra on, but you could be right with that detail. But I do know that he basically, now, did he do that because, if they were, in other words, if she was dead at that point, it's obviously easier because of their
Mhm.
dimensions, right?
Yeah,
Libby's a larger girl. It would have been
yeah,
easier to reclothe Abby
yeah,
with Libby's clothing. That's what I've always
yeah.
surmised, that he
I
didn't want
mean,
to fit that
if
on.
if if you have any contacts with the behavioral guys, just in my kind of amateur, completely unqualified comments on it. Abby was a year younger than Libby. Libby was a bigger girl. Abby was thin. He may have looked at after he was done, looked at Abby as a child, whereas maybe he didn't look quite the same way at Libby. But also interestingly, his daughter looks like she probably looked very similar to Libby at that age. I don't know what that means, but by redressing Abby, it kind of restores her innocence. And he may have been in a different frame of mind after he was done, after this fantasy had ended and he had expunged all those crazy hormones that were driving him. But again, you'd have to have an expert on.
I do need to have a behavioral expert on, and I have the perfect one. It was John Douglas's partner, who I
Oh,
had
wow.
on one of my first. He is amazing. Greg, I would love to have him on and
Oh,
talk to him about this. He's also one of my mentors now in the expert witness world. So he's great. Greg McCrary, for those of you who know the famous profilers. He's one of the very famous
I
profilers.
would love to be on that. I'll be quiet. I'll just sit here and
He's
you give me one question and I'll be quiet otherwise. How's that?
Yeah, he is great. He's great. But anyway, to your point, it was certainly, he had some sort of respect in some odd way for how he treated Abby versus how he treated Libby. There's no doubt, by just clothing one and not the other. Uh,
By terrible, ridiculous coincidence, and I'm not going to explain the theory behind it, but like a year before this Odin theory came out, I put out a video on this with the title Antlers,
oh, you
and I gave
did?
her, and I predicted that symbols or either symbols of antlers or antler dust or something. I predicted some sign of antlers would be found at the scene. Isn't that weird? I'm not going to go into the reason why, but I'm sure it
Yeah.
has no bearing on the truth. But
No, that is weird. And I'll tell you what, and I'd like to talk about this and then we'll wrap up. But the other thing happening in this case that many of you might know about is the fact that third party culprit theories or introduction of evidence regarding those is not allowed, period, end of story. That means Ron Logan, they can't put the FBI agent on to talk about the probable cause statement, where she basically says, we have probable cause to believe Ron Logan committed this crime. I mean, you can read it for yourselves. I've got it.
Yeah, that would be powerful.
I've posted it many, many times on my Twitter.
I've seen it. Yeah.
The Keegan Kline, knowing that Abby and Keegan Kline were talking right before those murders, snapping, very close proximity in time to those murders, and we're supposed to meet up. Now, there's not any more information than that, right? That isn't allowed. This Odin theory, which again, I don't buy the Odin theory, but would a juror buy the Odin theory? I have such a weird, on this case, I just want it to be fair. On all cases, I want it to be fair. But this case has been so out the door unfair in terms of rulings, in terms of his treatment. It just bothers me. Now, as I said, if he's guilty, I would be one to go with the death penalty, because I don't like the death penalty except for children. When you take a child's life and then there's sexual assault or anything involved, now I understand Abby and Libby weren't penetrated, but this was a sexual crime, no ifs, ands, or buts, whether he masturbated off to the side or what exactly happened. But there's a reason.
Or later on, for the next 6 years, lying at home, it's, fantasizing about doing it. I mean, it's all the same thing. Yeah.
It's 100% a sexual crime. But my question is to you, because I know you're very much, and I'm not saying I don't believe Richard Allen isn't guilty. I'm not saying that. I'm holding off. I want to know what those confessions say, because all of this is not good enough for me. The bullet, because extractor tool marks and ejector tool marks, you have both. There's two little tools that use to eject that bullet. They're so soft on a hand ejection as opposed to a firing ejection.
Right.
So there's not the heat, the velocity to make those tool marks. We're going to probably hear from two tool mark experts who will have two totally different ideas. I haven't seen what their expert is going to say. But there's going to be an argument about that. And then you have these statements, I think 3 different vehicle descriptions. You have really loosey-goosey statements about, I think it was him, or a man that looked like him. Nobody says it was Richard Allen. They say, a man fitting the description. Remember, he is short, people. He's 5'4" on his license. He looked more like 5'5" with shoes on the mugshot.
He's Kevin, like Aiden Kearney.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. See, we keep digressing.
Sorry.
No. He's a midget. But anyway, what do you think about him not being allowed to put in the third-party culprit defense?
I mean, I would like to have a whole show talking about that more with a lawyer on, because I don't really know. This is, I can see the problem of just randomly throwing in third-party defenses all the time, right? But at the same time, if there does seem to be some reasonable, a trial that David Yannetti in the Karen Reed case had done 10 years ago involved his client. He was able to win a convicted murderer who'd been in jail for 10 years, a new trial based on a third-party culprit defense that the prosecution that his own defense hadn't pursued. And so I don't know what the circumstances we saw with Judge Canoni in the Karen Reed case. You got to convince me. You have to have a strong enough argument to be able for me to approve you to go with the third-party culprit defense. So I'm sure I'm not using the right language on those things. So, but as far as for me with Richard Allen, I agree with you. I'm not, and you know a lot more about bullets than I do. But I'm just, even for what I'm seeing, the science behind unspent bullets. They're definitely going to be experts that'll punch holes in that. And I think even confessions, and supposedly he has over 100 confessions in jail, but could be someone under duress or whatever. I'm dubious of any kind of witness statement, including confessions. However, that timing, if those witnesses hold up and they seem credible, and let's just the combination of those witnesses and those reports that he did the day after, and then also before they arrested him, those put him at the crime scene where I cannot see any way that he wouldn't have seen those girls. And he said he didn't. So to me, I mean, I have questions. Why didn't they find any DNA of him there? So there are questions, but for me, those witness statements and his own statements combined to put him right at the bridge, and that to me is
How about
powerful.
this? How about this? This really bothers me. The geofencing that was done. There was geofencing done, which was brilliant. I mean, I'm sure that when the FBI came in, they said, we're going to geofence this. They geofenced it, and they found Ron Logan. They never found Richard Allen's phone was not there. Just like Keegan Klein's phone wasn't there. So that's a big problem. But I also read in a recent ruling, I believe, and I don't have it before me, so don't hold me to this, but I believe they said that that's not going to be allowed. That I don't even know what to say about that. The defense is calling Keegan Klein, or trying to call Keegan Klein. He can't talk about particularly third-party culprit, but he can be interviewed, I believe, at least on the stand or testify.
Yeah.
But that's huge for me, just as an investigator. Why wasn't Richard Allen's phone there? He was supposedly
it's a very rural area, right? So and
what's fair for the goose is fair for the gander.
But Logan lives there. Logan's
but three other people were found there. 3 people.
I'd have to see more about what that's about. So I'm not saying you're wrong at all. I'm just saying I'd have to see exactly what that is. What information were they able to get in the geofence? So, I mean, I've made an effort over the last year to try to learn about forensic data and geofence, but it's hard. You don't really find too many people that are able to give you a clear explanation. So, or at least I haven't. So it's been. I even had a forensic expert on the show, or supposed expert. Didn't really give very clear explanations. So I'm still not sure. But you know
what? That's who I'll have on, is a geofence expert
that'd be great.
On Delphi. I'll do that next week. I'll see if I can get Greg McCrary. He's hard to pin down because he obviously is traveling around speaking and doing lots of stuff, but I'll try to get him again. I got him nabbed to talk about John Benet Ramsey, which he was involved in that case. And I mean, he said undoubtedly the parents, by the way, and Patsy Ramsey wrote the note. So we'll have him back on again, maybe to talk about that a little bit more again. But Kevin, thank you. Thank you so much. You're such a great storyteller, and you look at things from a different lens than me as an investigator looks from. And I love your lens, and I love how you explain things. Thank you, Gray Hughes, for your video animations. I know you tried to take the probable cause affidavit and show what the probable cause affidavit said the scene would look like. So we're not saying that's what happened. We're saying that that's sort of the mapping of the probable cause affidavit.
Awesome. I will have to come back and do some more during the course of the trial.
Absolutely. And you and I have a date for Karen Reed, because
that's coming up. Yeah.
It's coming up. We got a few more months, but
before you hit end, did you see the new filing last Friday that the state has an independent data forensic person that thinks they'll get accurate GPS location data from the vehicle with timestamps?
Yes, I saw that. I actually posted about it too. It's amazing, because that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to get a crime scene reconstructionist that has an engineering background, but they need to get an FBI agent, I think, to reconstruct that crime scene that has done 100 of those. That's what I think. They need to pull in somebody different, obviously, than who they had. But yes, I did. What do you think about that, Kevin? Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, and I found Karen's lack of reaction, or the reaction that she had no public reaction, or none of her social media minions that put out her reaction have said anything. What she should have said was, great, this will exonerate me. I hope they get that data. But no, what she has told people, my understanding is that, oh, I'm not worried about it. They're not going to get anything. They're full of shit. That's the reaction of a guilty person, not of an innocent person.
I totally agree. When I saw the reaction was, oh, in other words, they'll, just like they didn't get anything before, they're not going to get it now.
Yeah.
Nobody says that. If you're innocent, you're like,
Yep.
yes,
Yep.
finally they can show my car didn't hit him, and that,
Hmm.
I drove away and nothing happened. And yeah, no, I agree with you. And yes, I did see that. I'm on the
Yeah.
pulse of that case. I'm just trying to be a little bit more reserved about it. Oh, wait a
Yeah,
minute.
and you're covering a lot of cases too, so I've just been kind of focused on that one because I'm doing a book on it, and it has to be done in a month now. The clock is ticking. Deadline of November 15th
Oh, yeah.
from the
Well,
public.
real quick, Heisenberg, thank you so much for your contribution. He says she hit something twice. Yes, the father did say that she said she hit. Everybody said she hit something. Not everybody, but so many people she said those words to. Well, after the crime, during, to EMS, police, McCabe, everybody who was there heard her say in some form or another that she hit him.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, we understand, and hopefully this car situation will help. Really quick though, Kevin, tell us where my folks can find you. Tell us about your book you're writing, and tell us anything else you have coming up.
So Yellow Cottage Tales on YouTube. I know it's not a great name for a true crime channel, but when I started it, I didn't know that's what I would be doing with it. And the book will be out in January, and it's on the Karen Reed case. I do take a both sides look at it. We all know where I'm going to come down on the evidence, but at the same time, I do try to be really fair about presenting the conspiracy theory as well as I can. And I've worked hard to put people at ground zero in the bars and in the coffee shops as to what it felt like. Because to me, what I have found is that this conspiracy theory developed organically before Karen was even arrested. And I think I'm going to be able to show that to people.
Interesting. So what a different slant. You'll never
Yeah.
convince me it was a conspiracy, because it wasn't. But I look
No,
forward.
the theory, not the conspiracy.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, this sounds like a fiction, not a nonfiction book.
Yeah, no, there's no conspiracy. I want to be clear to that. Sorry if I missed this. Karen Reed, the evidence is overwhelming. But yet this conspiracy theory is caused this town and this region to turn on each other, to turn on innocent people and to persecute them. It's a terrible atmosphere up here right now, dangerous even. And but I think we've identified exactly how this conspiracy theory began to evolve, almost like a creepypasta, urban legend. That's how it happened.
Well, I find it interesting, right? The Salem witch hunts. When I watched this case and the cruelty on social media, just horrible, visceral reactions to the case, the trolling. I never imagined that that would exist to the degree it does on this case. Heisenberg, sorry. If she gets another mistrial, the only way she can free herself is to confess what happened that night. Yeah, I don't know. If she gets another mistrial, I don't know what the Commonwealth is going to do at that point.
I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think so. Kevin, thank you again for joining us. I look forward to the book. Don't say too much or people won't get to read give it all away.
Thanks, Jen.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
Right. Bye-bye. Everyone, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us to talk a lot of Delphi, actually. Again, I loved having Kevin on because he just has a totally different look. He looks at things from a book writer's standpoint, and I like that. I am going to come back, though. I'm going to get a telephone forensic expert on. I know exactly who I'm going to get on. He recently retired from the FBI. I think he will be great. The other person that I'm going to get on is hopefully Greg McCrary will come back on if I can get him to look at this case. The biggest problem is he's so busy, he doesn't want to relearn a case to talk about it, but I'll see what he'll do with the Delphi case for me. Let me just make sure I don't have any comments that I overlook. Good evening. Thanks, Jen. Look forward to watching trial with you. Thank you, Psych Nurse. Dixie Doodle. To all my mods, and Dixie, thank you so much for being here and handling the mod duties. Hopefully it's not too bad. Let's see. I haven't followed this case closely, so asking Jason Jensen. Oh, yeah, I like Jason Jensen. He's a private investigator. He and I have worked on a lot of different things behind the scenes together, and I like Jason. He's a good guy. He's on Twitter as Oreo, I believe. Let's see. Anyway, thank you, chatters. Thank you, everybody. I normally don't like to go this long. Until next time, may justice be served.